Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.
Hello and welcome to the Racing Post Cricket World Cup show. I'm James Milton. I'm joined by my Racing Post colleague Liam Flynn and by Coral's Dave Stevens. And guys, it's been an eventful few days since our last show, with England's shock defeat to 8-1 Sri Lanka being the most eye-catching result. So Dave, I'll turn to you first for a quick spin through the latest outright betting. Should England backers be concerned?
Well, we'll come on to that because you are an England backer, James. But yeah, the market, I think, now has almost got it right in that India are the new favourites, 15-8. England have been favourites throughout, 7-4 earlier watches of the Racing Post Cricket World Cup show. Well, now, I thought that was too short. They're just not invincible, England. We've seen that now, 2 defeats. So India, 15-8 favourites, looking really, really strong. England, only 2-1, so they're not, it's not a massive drift, it should be said. And of course, they look that they should still qualify for the final four. It's then 5-2 Australia. Australia are a bit like the Germans in football. They're always there. They're really annoying, the Australians. When they look down, they just keep going. And then finally, 13-2 shots New Zealand. So it's going to be a major surprise, I think, if these four aren't the final four. The chasing pack, which will probably save England, the chasing pack just haven't been consistent enough, the likes of Sri Lanka, Pakistan. So, yeah, England no longer favourites. But as I say, you're an England backer. Are you worried?
I'm a little worried, as you say. I mean, I don't think you should be concerned if you backed England. They're going to make the semi-finals. I'm pretty confident about that. My worry about them now is that before this tournament, they looked absolutely ruthless in run chases. I think they'd nailed something like 19 or 20 consecutive run chases at home in ODIs. And now they've fell short in a high-scoring game against Pakistan. And then that defeat to Sri Lanka was a real shock because, the midway point, Sri Lanka got, 230 or something, and they were 18-1 after that innings. So, the market just couldn't see England fluffing that run chase. So that's the concern. Jason Roy's absence, I think, has been a real blow for England. Him and Bairstow, when they're firing at the top of the order, there's just that fear factor there. And James Vince has come in and unfortunately for those who like watching him has just flattered to deceive again with a couple of nice 20s.
But even without Jason Roy, you'd have backed in. England should have still beaten that Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
They should have picked that total up.
Yeah.
That if you were just coming into this Cricket World Cup and watched that game as a game alone, you wouldn't know that one team was the tournament favourites and the other was a tournament outsider.
Yeah.
That for me was actually more worrying than the defeat to Pakistan, because Pakistan on that day are mercurial and can beat anyone. So I say worrying signs for England. But if we say they're going to get into that final four, and then when it comes to that knockout, anything is possible.
Yeah. And India obviously worthy favourites based on their performances so far. But let's not forget they had a real scale in against Afghanistan, who were 12-1 and traded odds on in play in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about England sort of batting lineup capitulating in that game against Sri Lanka, but then we saw, like you say, nearly a bigger upset the following day in that game. And I think Bruce actually spoke on this show quite recently about India's sort of slow scoring rate, looking like a side that are never really going to reach 400 runs essentially, and it did actually cost them in that game. So when you score slowly and you lose wickets alongside that, you're in a pretty sticky situation. And all credit to Afghanistan, I mean, in both departments. So yeah, the Hampshire Bowl has proven to be quite a low-scoring venue at this tournament so far, but managed to surpass 200 runs against a pretty decent India attack. So that was a cracking game, and obviously that following that, we had a sort of that electric game between West Indies and New Zealand, where Kane Williamson carried the Kiwis to victory again at 148. And then obviously that Trent Bolt catch right at the end, sealing a slender win. So I do have my slight concerns about New Zealand. I mean, I've liked obviously they are shortening to top the group stage now, and obviously with England faltering and that slight wobble against Afghanistan from India, the opportunity is certainly there for them. But I have major concerns over the form of Guptill and Monroe at the top of the order. They both got golden ducks in that game. Started obviously the tournament very well. In that game against Sri Lanka, chasing down without losing a wicket. But I've been quite concerned about them, and going into the knockout phase, that's something that they've really got to work on, because you can't be relying on, as great a batsman as he is, you can't be relying on Kane Williamson to bowl you out every time. So I think it's the tournament's sprung into life, but and it's given those outsiders, as we said, the likes of Bangladesh especially, a little bit more hope. But I do think that top four is probably still just about nailed on, and I don't think we can read too much into it because those knockout games are just one-off matches, and it's just a case of which team can right their wrongs by the time we get to that stage.
Yeah, I mean, England will hope. They've got a couple of really bad performances out the way in the group stage. I mean, just talking about that New Zealand-West Indies game, the West Indies in-play odds crashed from 33-1 to 4-9 during Carlos Brathwaite's incredible century.
That was, yeah.
I was keeping a very close eye on those odds because I backed the Windies at 9-1 when they needed about 40 to go. So, and fell 5 runs short. 5 runs and kind of a couple of yards short with Brathwaite caught on the boundary going for the match-winning 6. But it was a spectacular few days of cricket after a slightly soggy start to the tournament. So that was just what we needed. And there should be plenty more drama when England take on Australia tomorrow, as we're speaking, Tuesday at Lords. And yeah, Dave, suddenly after England's defeat to Sri Lanka, this is a really important game for them. What's the betting?
And actually, it is worth just pointing out England's last 3 games on paper were the hardest 3: Australia, India, and New Zealand. Yeah. So I think one more win we think should probably be enough. But as I say, you're never going to write off the Australians. We know India are class. And New Zealand likewise. So this game tomorrow at Lords, huge. I mean, England-Australian cricket is always huge. This doesn't need any extra spice. England 8-11, Australia 11-10. I suppose it's the old thing about betting. You're looking at the prices, and I'm afraid at the prices, I feel kind of unpatriotic. I've been against England throughout this tournament, but Bruce Millington is not here. He'll tell you sentiment has to go out the window when there's betting. And at the prices, I have to say, I would just favour Australia 11-10.
Well, goodness me, I'm shocked to hear that from you, Dave. But I think it has to be said, Liam. England beat Australia, I think 4-1 in Australia and 5-0 at home in one-day series last year. This is a very, very different Australia side. Obviously, Smith and Warner back for starters. They didn't always have their first choice pace attacks there. So how do you see this one going? Does the 11-10 Australia tempt you?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to be unpatriotic as well. I think it is quite a toss-dependent game as well, to be fair. I mean, you're looking at the bigger sides now, and you're seeing whether they sort of look at Virat Kohli. He always likes to chase with India. England tend to prefer to set the score. So I think it could depend on that. I mean, if England win the toss and bat, then maybe you'd maybe lean more towards them. But I think, as we said, based on the prices and the way Australia have been going at the moment, I just have to edge towards them. I mean, I posted 307, 334, 381 since that defeat to India. I think the return of Marcus Stoinis gives some balance to that batting lineup, and he's a good option with the ball in the middle overs, which is probably the one area I'd say they've struggled beyond sort of Cummins and Stark with the ball. Warner's obviously firing, so is Smith, as we said. And as I said, England tend to sort of buckle when the pressure is on them. They're able to bully sides, and when they set the score, they can be absolutely ruthless, as you said. But at the moment, when there seem to be a few question marks around them when they're set scores, and I think they could be sort of in this game anyway playing catch up with from the start with Roy out. I think Bairstow and Vince have not looked sort of a convincing opening partnership at all at the moment. I know they haven't had many games together, but against sort of Cummins and Stark, I think England could possibly lose a couple of early wickets, and with the pressure from that Sri Lanka game, that could tumble a bit. So for that reason, another bet I like to look off is possibly Jos Buttler as top England run scorer in this one. I think it's about 6-1. I mean, he scored 197 runs in this World Cup so far, which isn't actually a bad total given where he's coming in the order. And we talked about Stoinis just then, but Australia are naturally weaker in the middle overs with the ball. And like as I said, I could see wickets tumbling early, and then if Buttler comes in, it might not take too much for him to go into that top run scorer bracket. He was player of the series against Australia last summer, fired an unbeaten 110 in the final ODI of that series. So they'd be my bets for that.
Yeah, that century at Old Trafford was one of the great one-day innings. I think he got 110 not out in it when England were chasing about 205 for victory. It was an extraordinary effort. I certainly agree with what you're saying about Australia's bowling in the middle overs. I think that is their weakness. We've seen Stark and Cummins bowling superbly. They're right up there in the wicket-taking table. But I think particularly Australia's spin department is a real weakness. Jason Roy looks unlikely to be risked, so we've discussed how that weakens England at the top of the order. I'm going to be very boring and stick with Joe Root, top run scorer. Actually, tipped him last time out. Still not sure how that didn't crop. He just looked set to anchor the chase against Sri Lanka, and then got out and it all fell apart. But he's got 3 50s and 2 centuries in 6 innings in this tournament. Last innings at Lords in ODIs was an unbeaten century against India last summer. So yeah, particularly with Roy out, I think Joe Root at around 3-1 is the bet for me.
Yeah, he's Mr. Consistent, isn't he? He is 3-1, as you say. Johnny Bairstow 130, Joss Butler 6-1. In terms of some of the Aussie batsmen, David Warner 11-4, Aaron Finch and Stephen Smith both 3-1. It does all come down to how much uncertainty now with England. If they bat first, the Aussies, a couple of quick wickets with that pace attack, does the doubt from Sri Lanka come back into it? The fact that being favourites, although they've been deposed now, but favourites from the start on home soil, that does bring with it an element of pressure. England have still never won a 50-over World Cup. All these things, it's a bit like the England football team. They always look brilliant in qualifying into a tournament, and that does bring a different set of pressures.
I think one player who's almost kind of epitomised that has been Moeen Ali. He saw when England were batting first and he came in against Bangladesh, wasn't it, and smashed 30 off 9 balls or whatever. And then in the 2 run chases that they've lost, he could hardly get the ball off the square against Pakistan and then hit a 6 and then hold out, clearly feeling the pressure against Sri Lanka. So that's kind of been symptomatic of the slight tension that England are feeling maybe, and this will be a fascinating test for them. So that's England, Australia at Lords on Tuesday. The lads not filled with confidence about England bouncing back from that shock defeat, but we'll have to see what happens there. And join us again after this break, and we'll be looking ahead to New Zealand versus Pakistan.
Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.
Hello and welcome back to the Racing Post Cricket World Cup show. I'm James Milton with my colleague Liam Flynn and Coral's Dave Stevens, and we're going to be looking ahead to a very interesting game between New Zealand, table-topping New Zealand, and Pakistan, who just about kept their hopes of a semi-final place alive with a really quite impressive win against South Africa last time. Impressive apart from their fielding, which, I mean, they must have dropped about 7 or 8 pretty simple chances. But they've got the job done quite nicely there. And Dave, what price are they to stun New Zealand?
Yeah, Pakistan, who are carrying my outright money from the start. They're so frustrating. Mercurial one day, as you say, those drop catches cost them there. They're 11-8, so outsiders here against New Zealand, 4-7. It'd be a terrific atmosphere at Edgbaston. Just going quickly back to, they do still have a chance of making the final 4. It looks, I mean, the betting says it's between England 8-1 on and Pakistan 5-1 for that final spot. If we say India, Australia and New Zealand are through. So plenty to play for Pakistan. And as I say, at their best, as we saw against England, as we've seen many times, at their best, they can beat anyone.
Absolutely. And Liam, I mean, New Zealand have won all 5 completed matches. They were given a huge scare, as we mentioned, by the West Indies last time out, winning by 5 runs. Do you see them having too much for Pakistan?
I do, yeah. I think as well, you look at these bigger sides, and there's a lot of these games being settled by fine margins, and so far for New Zealand, they've gone in their favour, which bodes well for going into the bigger games. I mean, you're looking at the last game, the Bolt catch, obviously only marginal from possibly going for a 6. Yeah. And then prior to that, I think it was a game against South Africa when Williamson, they came in, I think, needed 8 off the last over, and then he went and scored a 6. So the last 2 games, they've sort of edged a little bit closer to a defeat, but I think they should have too much for Pakistan. I like the look of a bet in this game. Lockie Ferguson, top New Zealand wicket taker. For me, he's been my favourite bowler in this tournament so far. I think his pace has just been unsettling top order batsman all tournament. I think he came into this World Cup with the highest average speed in ODIs in 2019. It's 3 for 59 against West Indies, same figures against South Africa at Edgbaston, and took 11 wickets in 3 ODIs against Pakistan in a series towards the end of last year. And he's arguably caused Trent Boult to up his game a little bit in this tournament. When we saw at the start of the tournament, it was sort of him and Matt Henry taking the bulk of the wickets, and Boult wasn't bowling badly but hadn't got the wickets, and now he started to perform as well. So I think he looks like a good bet in this one.
Yeah, tempted to grow a Lockie Ferguson moustache in tribute to...
Yeah, very possibly. I mean, if New Zealand go on a top group stage, then yeah, very possibly.
I think that'll be a fitting tribute. He's been great fun to watch, and varying that pace. You know, he's an express bowler, but he's used his slower variations quite nicely as well. The bet I like the look of, actually, and this is quite team news dependent, because I suspect Colin Munro's position at the top of the order is under pressure from Henry Nicholls. But if he is given another chance to open for New Zealand, his runs line is 27.5, and I'd be going under that. I mean, we saw Mohamed Amir's excellent tournament continue against South Africa. Got rid of Hashim Amla very early on there. I just think Munro's kind of ultra aggressive tactic is not going to work against a new ball bowler as good as Amir. And Pakistan also opened with Mohammad Hafiz's spin against South Africa, so that's another kind of awkward aspect for Munro to face. He's not in the best of form. He got 50 not out in the opening game against Sri Lanka, but under very little pressure, kind of chasing a small target. Since then, he's made 24, 22, 9 and a first ball duck last time out. So if he clings on to his place at the top of the order, I would definitely be opposing him there. And moving on to Thursday's game, which is another interesting one, West Indies versus India at Old Trafford. And the Windies almost pulled off a miraculous win against New Zealand, as we spoke about, having been 33-1 in play. They're outsiders, presumably, Dave, at Old Trafford?
They are, yeah. India 1-3 to win this one, and India 4-5 to win this group stage as well. 7-2 Australia, 7-2 New Zealand in that. West Indies 9-4. And West Indies are, again, I am slightly speaking through my pocket. They were one of my selections, along with Pakistan at the start. And I just look back at the game down at the Ageas Bowl against South Africa, where they started brilliantly. Then the rain came, and the rain never left, and the game obviously was abandoned, a point each against South Africa. And for me, that was the moment sort of the West Indies lost the momentum, because they're a lovely side to watch now. They've got fast bowlers, they've got lovely batsmen, obviously the likes of Shimron Hetmeyer. I'm going to keep following him over the cliff in top run score in every game they play, because he will cop at some point. But yeah, they're up against it now. Excuse me, 9-4 to win at Old Trafford.
Yeah, and India obviously run very close by Afghanistan in an amazing game last time out, Liam. But they just look like they've got a bit more all-round nous than the Windies, who were in a decent position before a middle order collapse last time out, and they just don't seem to have be able to go back down a gear once they start smashing it around.
Absolutely, they seem to have sort of one way to play, don't they? And I think the thing with India in that, it wasn't a terrific performance in that Afghanistan game by any means, but their bowling at the death was what impressed me there. I mean, Bumrah and Chahal, surprisingly. I mean, the thought of a spinner as a death bowler who's performing that well is quite remarkable. I mean, in that game, Shami actually finished with the best figures in the end, because obviously he had that hat-trick at the end, finishing 4 for 40, but obviously you've got to take that with a pinch of salt. It was against a very weak tail end who just had to go for it. I actually thought Bumrah was sort of standout bowler, and I'd like to possibly back him top India wicket taker in this game. Like I said, his death bowling really impressed me. 2 for 39 at the end of his 10 overs. 7 wickets in the tournament so far, perhaps a little bit under what was expected of him, but there's a long way to go. And I think he could flourish against a West Indies side who've actually seemed to unravel against these opening pacemen. I mean, Hope, Pooran, Nurse and Lewis were all dislodged by Trent Boult last time out and scored only 3 runs between them. So I think I can see a similar. I can see something similar unfolding against India with Bumrah with the ball. So I think, Jasprit Bumrah, top India wicket taker.
Yeah, he turned the game against Afghanistan. I think the Afghans had just gone odds on in play, and he came back, got 2 wickets, and suddenly they were on the back foot. I was impressed by India's almost their body language more than anything during that chase. It was looking rocky, but I think Virat Kohli's got so much confidence in Bumrah and in his spinners that even though they were kind of up against it, defending such a small total, you never felt there was a sense of panic in the field. So that was pretty impressive. I
still think watching India throughout this tournament, they're like a sports car just cruising. They're not in top gear yet. I don't think they're close to it, and yet they're still winning. They're they're favourites to top the group. The likes of Bumrah and Kohli, I just think they are absolute Rolls Royce of cricketers, and I just think, as you say, they never panicked against Afghanistan. They always looked in control, and I think that there's more to come. There are just, for me, there are just no weaknesses in that side. The batting is extraordinary. I mean, it's the old line, I would pay to watch Virat Kohli bat. He's just wonderful. Bumrah came into it with a tall reputation, which he's lived up to. And they got Chahal as well spinning. So for me, worthy favourites now. And sadly, I think this could be the sort of the final nail in West Indies' hopes of going any further. Yeah,
one area where I'd be looking to side with the West Indies in this game actually is to hit more sixes. When Coral's prices appear for that, have a look at that market, because as we've mentioned, the Windies are just going to keep on swinging, I think. And in that defeat to New Zealand, they won the sixes count 13-4. was 11-6 against Bangladesh, 6-0 against England. You know, they've got so many powerful hitters all the way through the order. And you know, I think as is likely, they do find themselves kind of behind the run rate against a quality India side. Then they're going to try and hit their way out of trouble. So I think that would be an interesting market to see. So that's New Zealand, Pakistan, and West Indies, India, where we've got to look forward to. And we'll be looking ahead to Sri Lanka against South Africa after this break.
Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.
Hi, welcome back to the Racing Post Cricket World Cup show. We're now going to be looking ahead to the debut for the Riverside ground in Chesterley Street, and that hosts Sri Lanka against South Africa this week. South Africa eliminated already. It's worth remembering they were fourth favourites for the trophy when they were at the start of the tournament, 9-1. They were 11-8, I think was the top price that they make the semi-finals, and it's just all gone wrong for them. And yet, Dave, they're quite hot favourites to beat a Sri Lanka side who obviously shocked England last time out.
Yeah, I mean, this is one where I'm hoping the market has got it completely wrong. South Africa, as you say, in footballing parlance, already got 1 foot on the beach, I think. I mean, they're 4-9 to win up at Durham, 13-8 Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka still in with a chance, it should be said, of making the top 4 and progressing to the semi-finals. So they've still got plenty to play for. In contrast to South Africa, you could say, well, they're playing for pride, but they've not really looked like they're playing for pride so far in this tournament. So I'm hoping the market has got this completely the wrong way round.
Yeah, and Liam, South Africa were needing a miracle even before that defeat to Pakistan, but just thought they were so disappointing in that game. You know, we mentioned earlier Pakistan's pathetic fielding, and it didn't make any difference. They still won by around 50-run margin. Can you are you ready to lump on South Africa at 4-9?
No, definitely not. I'd go for Sri Lanka as well in this one. I mean, South Africa have just been absolute shambles from start to finish. Amla has just been very, very poor. I say it every time I come on the show, it seems. He's just so slow scoring and has got no sort of mid-order quality. I mean, de Kock has batted fairly consistently but hasn't really pulled up any trees as such. And I mean, their best bowler has been 40-year-old Imran Tahir. And I think, this week I saw that Du Plessis seemed to make the excuses about sort of Kagiso Rabada playing in the IPL when he'd asked him not to play in it so that he'd be fresher for the tournament. I mean, I don't think it would have really made a difference. Just all through the team there have been issues. And out of the tournament, probably a lack of incentive to win. And I think Sri Lanka, meanwhile, they've got a point to prove. Whether they do, I mean, it's still a big outside chance of them breaking into that top 4. But nonetheless, they'll be out to so many teams everybody had them written off sort of to finish bottom of the standings for this tournament. And obviously rain has helped them a little bit. But after that win against England, they'll be in good spirits and they'll be hoping to prove a point. As I say, bowled England out for 212. South Africa have lost 5 of their 7 games in this tournament, so I think it all points towards Sri Lanka for me. Maybe when prices come out, look at Van der Dusen's top score for South Africa. I mean, de Kock's been steady, but as I say, far from explosive. And I think Van der Dusen's arguably the batsman who's been most suited to that aggressive approach that is required in ODIs now. Scored 67 against New Zealand and 50 against England. He's had an okay tournament, so I think I'd be looking to get with him in that market. Yeah,
I mean, that's been a huge problem for South Africa. I think the top score in a top individual score from any of their batsmen is only sort of 60 odd. And you're just not going to win ODIs in the modern era unless you're making those big hundreds. England made 200s and still lost to Pakistan. So
it's funny. I mean, talking about batsmen there and not scoring. We went into this tournament and there was a lot of talk about, is a team going to score 500 for the first time? It hasn't materialised actually like that. I think there's probably a couple of factors. I think the weather conditions haven't been that conducive to big scores. But I also think it's credit to the bowlers. There is a lot of classy bowlers out there that have almost, it's not going to be a walkover for the batsmen. So we're still waiting for this 500, and I'd say it's highly unlikely to come in this game up at Durham.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we mentioned Jasprit Bumrah a lot, but New Zealand's fast bowlers have been superb, and actually even Ngidi and Rabada and Imran Tahir have been very good for South Africa. It's just when they get down to the kind of next bowlers and just a complete lack of batting strength, really. One bet I'd be interested in when the top Sri Lanka bowler market is priced up is Dhananjaya de Silva, who took 3 wickets against England last time out. He took 2 before then against Australia, and he's kind of become Sri Lanka's main spinner now, having been seen as a bit of a bit part all-rounder at the start of the tournament. And South Africa just looked hopeless against spin throughout this tournament. You know, the spinners haven't always been taking wickets against them, but the batsmen have just never been able to kind of get on top of them. So Dhananjaya would be one. I mean, it'd be lovely to see if Lasith Malinga can repeat his heroics against England, but might be asking a bit much for the old boy. But that was wonderful to see. But so Sri Lanka, lively outsiders, I think, is the consensus there in Durham, and almost looks like one of those late season football matches when there's one team kind of lacking motivation. Kind of South Africa got very little to play for.
I say that's what I'm hoping for. You know, they go up to Durham and they're thinking, well, we'd rather be back home now in the warmth of South Africa. So, yeah, so I'd say, look, the market. I think the market might correct and come a little bit closer anyway. But even so, I think there's still be juice in that Sri Lanka price.
Yeah. Excellent. Right, well, we're going to move on now and get your best bets for these 4 matches that we've previewed. Dave, I'll come to you first.
Well, I feel like I've been so negative about England. I better try and redress the balance bit. Joe Root, he's Mr. Consistent. He'll love it against the Aussies. 3-1, around 3-1 for Joe Root to be top England scorer.
And Liam, what's your pick of the bet?
I'd say Lockie Ferguson, top New Zealand wicket taker against Pakistan.
Well, I'm sticking in that game, hoping that New Zealand selectors keep faith in Colin Munro, because then we can all cash in by going under his runs line at 27.5. I just think he's really going to struggle against Pakistan's Mohammad Amir with the new ball. And join us again for our next Cricket World Cup show on Friday, when we'll be reflecting on England's game against Australia and looking ahead to another huge game for Owen Morgan's men against India.
Don't bet silly, bet savvy. Join Coral's Bet and Get Club and get a free £5 bet every Sunday. The smart money's on Coral.